Pulling offshore planer boards, and then we were also pulling tadpoles and flat lines. We were using handmade jigs out of do-it molds that we tie ourselves. And then the turn is, last year we got second place at Tavares. Didn't fish this chain. Found out that pulling jigs works here. And basically what we do is, instead of long lining jigs, we pull planer boards with jigs behind them. And it turns your long line rig into a long line rig on steroids. In other words, instead of going through the water with a 2-row picker, we got a combine out there. And what the planer board does is you basically clip this to the line where it enters the water when you're long lining. And then a turn is the lure goes behind it, and the more line you let out, the farther the planer board goes out beside the boat. And then a turn is it's got a spring-loaded thing, so if you got a little bite, a lot of the times the fish would just grab it and just pull the flag back. And the problem that we had is that I feel that tactically, our strategy was good, but tactically we didn't execute. We didn't take short enough strokes.
Right.
It's more like crop dusting. If you started too far back, you wasted time, and it would be like coming in and hitting the high wire.
Right.
And then if you went too far, then in turn is your lures would be all weeded up, and you'd pull out and you'd hit the fence line.
Right.
So what we should have done is, I think we could have done a lot better if we would have been more efficient. And with Kyle and myself working together, how we won the championship was lines in the water, lures in the water. And the biggest key that what helped us yesterday, and then today it didn't seem to work out so good, or we had to switch because of all the particles that were in the water. We're pulling an offshore tadpole, and what this is an inline diving weight. And when you put this in the water and this little clip is on the top of it, it dives those jigs down. So we can put this a foot to 2 to 3 foot behind the board.
Right.
And we were running them 2 foot, a foot and a half, and a foot, and then a flat line.
Right.
And then the situation was that with these going through the water day with all those particles, just with a foot and a half of line in the water, those particles would hit that, they'd slide down like a rake, and then they'd let loose, and then they'd get on the jigs, and you'd foul up a lot more with this.
Right.
So what we did was we switched to long lines. Then when we'd clean them up, we could just slap the minnows off on the water, off the jigs, and then clean them back up again. But this 1-2 punch with these tadpoles, diving that down, and then a turn is with the jigs on the back of it, allowed us to put out things quickly. I said last year at Tavares, Kyle, I'm not going to set out 150 foot of line 8 times. With these, we set out 6, 7, and 8 foot of line at Tavares. Here we set out 1 and 2 foot of line. So instead of putting out all that line and having to cast it and all that stuff, you're a lot more efficient. So the 1-2 punch actually did help us out quite a bit and allowed us to do that. The biggest thing is, where we felt short is, Brian McGee had called me on the way down here. He had lost his daughter.
Yes.
And he says, I want you boys to win this for my daughter and for God, for the Lord. And, you know, good Lord willing, I think he wanted us to win, but I just don't think that we tried enough or prayed enough. But I want to thank my Savior, Jesus Christ, for this finish, and we feel very blessed to be where we're at.
You bet you guys. Congratulations. Let's give him a hand. Great job. Tommy, Skarlis, Kyle Steinfeldt.